The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the host and guest and do not reflect the opinions or policies of the station, its owners, or its advertisers. All content should be considered editorial in nature. Listener discretion is advised.
Recorded live. Cumberland County's smartest hour of talk radio. Welcome back to another edition of the Carolina Cabinet.
Well, everyone, good evening. Welcome to the Carolina Cabinet. I'm Peter Pappas. I'll be your host this evening. We are proud to be the only homegrown conservative talk radio show in the region, and we know this is the smartest hour of radio. Our job is to give a voice to the conservatives of Fayetteville, Cumberland County, and beyond. And this evening, I welcome my dedicated co-host, Mrs. Laura Musler. Welcome, welcome.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. And joining us very shortly is former Councilman Mario Benavente, currently County Commissioner, candidate at large. So he'll be joining us shortly. So we're going to dive right in. So what do you think, Laura?
Let's do it.
What you been up to the last week?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Oh, I had a board meeting for the Fayetteville Republican Women's Club.
A board meeting?
Yeah. I actually like our board meetings. I don't really do like a formal agenda for our board meetings. I give each person time to talk so that we can encourage each other and hear different ideas.
Okay.
So it's good. I love my women. Okay. They're awesome.
I like women too, but
stop it.
It's different ways. Okay. So let's see. I prepared for Snowmageddon.
It's working.
That's what I did last week. I was searching high and low for like, what did I do last week? And it was like, okay, everybody's panicking for a storm that we fell short. I feel shortchanged a little bit. Mario, hey, how you doing?
Hi, Mario.
It's good to see you.
Hey, y'all. Didn't realize y'all were on the air, right on time.
You know, ever since Laura joined, it's been very regimented. We better be live by 6.
Well, there was, I guess, the previous studio. And instinctively, I was like, I know where I'm going.
I knew exactly. That's why I tried calling. I was like, I know he's probably going
I know where I'm going.
Yeah.
Apparently not. But this is a great building.
That's okay. Well, thank you. So I prepared for Snowmageddon. That included just prepping employees and stuff like this is what we'll do. And that's the usual. Nothing I haven't done before.
Everyone survived.
Everyone survived. God bless. Although, we had ice yesterday. I woke up this morning.
Ice was here?
No.
Oh, okay.
Frozen water, not
okay.
ice. Yeah, come on, baby. But the rain was warm enough to wash everything away this morning. I was surprised that came out. So how about you, Mari? Anything interesting happened last week?
Nothing out of the ordinary. There's plenty of events going on in Fayetteville. We're glad to support some folks. I'm sure you guys know Carlos Tolentino. He's gotten quite Facebook famous for his artwork. He does a lot of that bleach work. He's got a tattoo shop downtown. Okay. So they had a really big clothing release. And then there's some other members of the community that brought in some speakers, had all the judges in the same room, local district court judges, to hear from folks that were formerly incarcerated. I mean, anytime you're hearing... Was
that the expungement clinic?
No. This was just sort of a community gathering, and it was for the young people.
Okay.
But Heal the Ville has done some events around town in the past, and this was just another occasion to bring some speakers in. And anytime you can meet somebody who's done 20 years and has really turned their life around and is giving back. I mean, it's definitely something I think is important for our local judges to hear from folks like that, and so that we can find better ways to get folks re-entered into our community.
I'm more concerned about the kids hearing it so that they don't want to be 20 years of a missing life.
100%. Yeah.
So I know you stay involved. I mean, you councilman for how many terms did you serve?
2 terms.
2 terms. Are we counting that one little pygmy term? That little
1 year? They bit, I think, a good 6 to 8 months out of that 2 years, which is a big chunk when you think it's only 2 years.
So 2 terms, and I know you've been active in the community. And have you been able to do any work to make the mortgage? I mean, have you been able to get back to making a couple of bucks?
So I practice law here in the city of Fayetteville. There's always plenty going on. I'm on appointed list for the juvenile courts, for DSS court, and I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot of the issues and a lot of the gaps in what ought to be, good quality county services that do not become eventually criminal court matters, potentially, or adult criminal matters, if the things are working as they should be. But we've got a lot of great staff members that unfortunately need a little bit more investment and a few more tools under their tool belt to really be able to do a good job for our citizens. We're missing some of that, and that's why I'm hoping to get onto that board of county commissioners to work on it for them.
Well, I ask because I try to humanize our electeds.
Sure.
They have careers and jobs and families.
They better.
People, I think it makes a more effective elected official if it's the old adage, you want something done, give it to a busy person.
And I mean, I've seen the problem with folks who are relying on that elected position for income. And that's not a good elected official
it's
to
kind
have.
of sad. I mean, because look, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, the elected positions do pay. What was your pay as a city councilman? Mid 20,000, something like that?
You'll have to do the math for me. That paycheck was like $600, $700 every 2 weeks.
Okay, so 12, yeah, probably made $2,000. Yeah, 24,000 probably. Okay, yeah, that's well, median income here in Cumberland County is what, about 40 some thousand. We're right at the middle for the whole state. We're like number 50.
Median, I think, is about that, but I think what they call the most people, whatever is it, the mode, most people in Fayetteville, however, makes a lot, even less than that.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's floating closer between 25 and 30. But we obviously have some higher earners that bump our median up to that 45, 50.
Well, but again, we want elected officials that, while we would be happy to reward them with a salary, I don't need them to be there just because of the salary.
Or
I need
God
them
forbid,
to have some other...
they don't have solid ground on a actual career, an actual job. And then they start making decisions based on sort of what keeps them in office rather than what's best for the community. God forbid you say yes to, deals, that you feel like you're going to get kickbacks from, or you're going to get a job opportunity from. And those are the wrong reasons to be voting for a particular item. And in my time on council, I saw some of that.
Right. Well, so we could just go around and we ask, like, what you've been up to last week. Just casual thing.
Absolutely.
But, so we're going to talk a little bit of national
Now it's
stuff.
the gotcha time.
Let's do it.
I'm just joking.
No, I love it.
But out of anybody, I think Mario could handle that.
Yeah.
He could handle lacrosse. So we've had a busy national news cycle. It's disgusting. I hate even bringing it up. But first we have Governor Tim Walz. Comparing ICE to the same plight of Jewish people in the Holocaust.
Beautiful.
Isn't that nice? I mean,
what exactly did he say?
Do
we know?
Where's his quote? Come on, we did get it. Where is it?
I don't know. I only have the response.
I have the response from the Holocaust Museum, and it says that Anne Frank was targeted and murdered solely because she was Jewish. Leaders making false equivalencies to her experience for political purposes is never acceptable, despite tensions in Minneapolis. Exploiting the Holocaust is deeply offensive, especially as anti-Semitism surges. And that was from the U.S. Holocaust Museum.
Because he's constantly using the words Gestapo.
Yeah.
And Walz framed ICE enforcement and federal actions as creating terror in communities, drawing parallels to Anne Frank era persecution.
Yeah. And see, and this is what I don't understand, why people, anybody, left or right, when you assign these nicknames to people, you're dehumanizing them.
That's
you
right.
call them Gestapo, you call them Nazis, you call them liberal lunatic, whatever. I said crazy blue hair before. You've heard that. I think it makes it easier to treat people less than.
I think the conventional wisdom that I've kind of been hearing from this conversation, I think is noteworthy to y'all's point, is that you don't have to liken something that America is doing, the federal government is doing, to Nazi Germany. That in fact, if you look historically, those folks in Nazi Germany were studying what folks in America were doing to folks during antebellum periods. They were looking at how they were dehumanizing and engaging in the slave codes. And so we don't need to liken what America is doing to, I think, a foreign power, because there's plenty of American history that we can point to say, this is in a lot of ways not anything new. I like to have conversations with my conservative friends who are wary of the power of the federal government and who are wary of their rights being infringed, even upon arguably their political enemies, because that can just as quickly turn on you.
You're maybe talking some lawfare, when the shoe's on the other foot.
That's exactly right. So I think those are the kinds of conversations that I'm most,
but ICE
interested
is not
in.
doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say that I'm sure there are people, just like there's bad police, there's bad everybody. I'm sure there's bad ICE officers who are overstepping their bounds. However, you have the right to peaceful protest. You do not have the right to move into personal space of, or ram with your car, or throw them over, hit them so hard that they fly over a mound, or anything like that.
We talked about this pre-show, it's like, and we're going to get to this in the next little part, but when did we as Americans, when did it enter is it zeitgeist the right word to say, kind of just the accepted way things are? When did it enter that it's okay to go and not just observe and film law enforcement, but to seriously get in their personal space while they're conducting their business? When did that become okay?
I think it started back when we started doing the whole I'm a sovereign citizen, when you get pulled over by the police and all that stuff, and disrespect. You know what? Go to court. Hire Mario as your attorney.
Well, and not to give free legal advice, but
I can give him. Yeah,
I do tell folks to,
comply.
Always feel good about having your own recordings of these things, because we've seen even in the city of Fayetteville and Cumberland County times when body cam footage that's supposed to be,
right.
These are cameras that are paid for by taxpayers, footage that is, supposed to be available under those conditions that are required, and they get denied by the judge. That even city council won't put under a gag order.
Releasing.
That's right. Okay. That's right.
Okay.
So
they don't release it.
No, usually they don't.
And you're exactly right. They usually don't.
Yeah.
And there's always a reason not to.
Right.
Which is always to me a concern of what's the point of those things, And so when people do find themselves in a situation where they feel unsafe or whatever the case may be, I encourage folks to record.
And see, to me, I see the reason not to release it as let the professionals do their jobs, because we can't arbitrate this case.
Whether or not they release it, I hear you.
In public, you know what I mean?
You don't have to release it, but if you yourself want to have your footage that you have access to it, you've got to be the one to record.
Okay,
you've got to be the one to record.
And again, you can do that from a safe place, safe distance, and not into quote unquote interfering. And again, one thing I've said, I think previous few shows now lately, is let's use a 72-hour rule. Let's wait and see how the stuff.
I'm jumping to conclusion. I'm going to get on the internet and start spreading misinformation right now.
Well,
today was the first day.
It looks like there's a lot of that going on from even the supposed officials.
Yeah,
they don't take their own advice for that 72-hour rule.
No, they don't. But that doesn't mean I can't.
Sure.
That you can and you can't.
No, that's right. That's right.
I mean, we have to be reasonable, unfortunately, adults in the room,
sure.
which still is scary to me anyway.
That is. I would agree totally with that.
Yeah, I don't.
I'm just saying, out of ice, let them do their job. But here's the thing. The big kicker that I keep saying, if the locals cooperated with ICE, just pretend for a moment, Peter, that you are an illegal immigrant and you have been arrested for molesting a child. You're in jail. I call Mario, who's an ICE agent. Sorry, Mario. And I say, I have this person. I'm going to release them into your custody. There's no reason to do raids. He's already been arrested for doing something that he doesn't belong doing. There's no reason to do raids and be out in the public. Done. Bye. See you later, Peter. Have a nice life in wherever it is that you're from. Mm-hmm. If they were cooperating, none of this would be happening. But the fact that they take whatever.
I think the cooperation gets I think that word gets misused. Cooperation, what I want from my locals is just what you described. It's a record search. Okay, this guy's got federal warrants, whatever. Let's hold him for somebody else. I don't want my sheriff going out
releasing them
doors.
No, I don't want them.
I don't want my sheriff doing immigration stuff.
They shouldn't. That's exactly right. What happens is the sheriff should call the ICE and say, "Hey, I have somebody here that has committed crimes. Come pick them up." Done. No reason to go out and that because people are getting picked up, whether there are mistakes made. Mm-hmm. American citizens are being picked up. While they're illegal here anyway. No person is illegal, but you can be an illegal immigrant,
especially on stolen land.
Right? Yes, especially on stolen land. But people that have been here and they're paying taxes, or they're doing a job, or they're and they're associated with, and they get picked up in the raid, they're getting deported too. I don't want that to happen. I don't want the 5-year-old child, his dad, to take off on him and leave this 5-year-old child in the street.
Right there, the narrative was that ICE seized a child,
whatever, but
because of the 72-hour rule.
Right.
Let's be patient.
But I don't want that to even come about. If this guy was detained, he should have been turned over to ICE, and that would have. I think it would avoid
some very violent interactions if we could just get cooperation. Now, I know Mario's going to chomp at the bit of this because he's got some legal ideas. But I'm sorry, Mario. This is just the topic du jour.
It is a big
I'm
topic.
Sorry that this
not at all.
Your episode. Tonight,
I'm here to just give my 2 cents where I can fit it in.
And you don't have to participate with the national. We're just
no. I think it's important because there are levels to government that people still need to recognize, whether it's municipal, local, state, and federal. But at least with the county stuff, it does trickle down that, whatever the federal government is giving to North Carolina as a state, those General Assembly folks are giving it to the county commissioners to disperse. So there is, I think, a more direct line than there was maybe with city council being a county commissioner to have a say about this, because certainly if, maybe Cumberland County isn't the most ripe for issues, on this topic. But certainly, how we apply the Constitution, how we apply these are things that 100% should be, conversation. My goodness, the way the Second Amendment is being talked about right now by supposed supporters of, your ability to bear arms here in a military town, everyone should have their hackles up. That by virtue of carrying without any sort of, illegal intent being ascribed to you, suddenly it's justification for you to be potentially killed by federal law enforcement. I think those are issues that should have local folks very much concerned because of how that can be applied. If the feds are doing that, maybe the locals start doing that. And supposedly the whole reason we have the Second Amendment was to prevent exactly that. So I think it is a point of interest for folks. Okay,
so we have elections coming up. And we're going to have a new sheriff, potentially, or we're going to have the
Mr.
sheriff
Morgan reelected.
Reelected, one or the other. So we're going to have a sheriff election. Do you think that the sheriff should communicate in the way that we said with ICE? If they have a criminal, should they turn them over to ICE, or should they release them back into our community to do further harm?
So I think
that was a trick question, but I'm sorry.
That
was a loaded question.
But we can kind of back up before you answer that. Did or did not the North Carolina legislature pass a law last year not giving the sheriffs any latitude in cooperating?
But they still do.
Yeah. Well, I think what ends up happening, and this is very specific examples of cases where I've had folks who are undocumented who have gotten in some level.
Wait. What does that mean, undocumented? That means they crossed over the border illegally, correct?
Not necessarily. So they could have overstayed their work visa. They could have been.
So they do have documentation. That's
not presently. Not present.
Well, they have documentation, just
expired.
Some kind, perhaps. But those are things that, for lack of a better term, are not relevant to the potential criminal matter that I'm involving them in. We can use a very easy one: DUI. It happens to everybody. Happens to the best of us. For better or for worse, if you're incarcerated over it, the sheriff's department is required to alert the relevant folks, whether that's ICE or otherwise. Now, the likelihood that ICE is actually going to show up and do their job, that is another issue that you'd be surprised they don't do. So if I've got somebody who has essentially handled their local matters, you cannot keep them indefinitely until ICE decides to show up and get them. So there have been plenty of times where, because this is a human being who are here in this country, they're afforded the same rights as everyone else. I've had to file a writ of habeas corpus against the sheriff and say that's right. And if you don't have I've asked you to alert whoever you need to alert. You've alerted whoever you need to alert, and they don't show up. Then you can't just keep them here.
So
forever.
what's a reasonable time to? I mean, is there?
The law says 72 hours.
Okay, so 3 days, and that's it.
That's it.
Okay. Well, and that listen, if
ICE
drops the ball,
fair game, yeah.
I don't see where, and I said this on another show. I don't know where the local sheriffs got the balls to say, no, North Carolina legislature, from which my power is derived, I'm not going to do what you said. It's like, come on.
Yeah, I think the logic that I've seen, whether we agree with it or not, it's for them it's a hierarchy, right? They've got the jails, and I'm not talking about Cumberland County specifically. They've got what they feel like is a million fires going, and they're not here to be firemen for a fire that's not theirs. They're here to address their 10 things, and the expectation that they're also now doing the job of federal law enforcement. It's a capacity thing from their perspective, that they're not going to be having their folks do more than what keeps them in their jobs and keeps them elected, and that's what they're focused on.
Okay. But doesn't keeping their constituents safe fall under their purview?
Well, I guess they think that that's exactly what they're doing by focusing on what they feel like are the bigger fish to fry, for better or for worse. I can't point to any incidences locally where someone who was, I guess, that caricature that Donald Trump talks about, that person who came over the border with all the horrible intent and engaged in all this violent crime, that's happened.
We haven't arrested a cell of Trendale.
Yeah, that hasn't happened. And so,
but they are in North Carolina, and primarily Raleigh and Durham.
Potentially.
And we're on 95, the gangsters corridor. So,
And so, this is true, I think, of most government issues. I think I use Department of Transportation as one of the kind of more harrowing examples for people when we talk about it, until it's actually a problem, it's not a problem, right?
Gotcha.
You know, you can have an accident or two, you can have a fatality or 100. Is that actually meeting the threshold of what gets them to put in?
Getting like a stoplight? Okay.
Potentially, right? The sad thing is that there is a calculus. There
Right.
is a number of accidents. There is a number of loss of life that government, for better or for worse, certainly adheres to. There's a number of spiders that are allowed in your peanut butter because there's agricultural production standards. You know, there's
Right.
just there is a line, and I'm not saying that people should be accepting of what the current line is. They should put pressure where they feel like it's unacceptable and whatnot. You know, certainly my position on immigration is always, you know, it's a lot of manufactured problems, right? When you bottleneck the process, the same people that I think are very raw about doing something about immigration are the same ones who say, I will do anything for my family. If someone, you know, was threatening my children, I would break every law in the world to save them. Well, that's exactly what these people are thinking.
But
so
don't you think the Biden administration holds some kind of responsibility letting
they all do
over 10 million people in a 4-year period of time?
Well, they all bear responsibility for not making this a priority to address the underlying issues, because at the end of the day, our country is made better by immigration, is made better by the folks who come here to do great things like my parents did. And
so the people that come legally, the ones that say, hey, I want to be a citizen, and they assimilate, don't come here and wave your flag from your country. If your country is so great that you want to raise your flag, and if socialism is so wonderful that you want to bring it here, then stay in your country.
Well, I think we're jumping around to a bunch of different topics. Just the idea that
we are.
You are, if you are interested in coming to this country and doing great things for yourself, especially if you're coming from a situation that is otherwise dangerous or just not economically viable, I think
that's not a reason to come to the country because your country is not economically viable. It's not. That's not.
If my kids are starving and I want to find a better way for them, I will. Again, I think most people here would say that they would do anything
so
to be able to fix
kids
that
are
issue.
Hungry, come on in, comma, you need to assimilate. You don't get to have mini hellhole Mexico in our downtowns. If you come from a land of crime and destitution, why come here and try to recreate the same
I like you, Mario.
I don't think that Greek Fest is ruining this city. I think that
because every one of our people came legally.
I think that. Well, I don't think it has to do with anything with that. I think that you guys are allowed to fly your flag. I think you guys are allowed to have spaghetti dinners, and I think that's a wonderful thing. I don't.
We
think
fly the American flag higher than the Greek one.
Well, but however you choose to do it, though, is I think fine by me. I'm not offended by that, and I think for anyone to say that anything less than what their definition of assimilation is, right? Because I think maybe there would be some that says, "Hey, how come you guys don't serve Bud Light and you only serve what's the Greek beer that you guys have there?"
Mykonos or something.
You have all that Mykonos. Where's my Miller High Life? That's a petty way to describe assimilation. So I think, you know, if we're talking about assimilation, I'm curious about what that actually is defined by, because I think the diversity of offerings, especially in a city like Fayetteville, a true city of nations, where we have, you know, this wonderful international festival every year. It's one of our, you know, real hallmarks. I'm not exactly sure who's upset by that. And I think, you know, kind of this clamoring for, you know, assimilation. I'm trying to see an actual issue here locally that has been created by people not quote unquote assimilating.
But at what point are you going to adopt being an American and saying the Pledge of Allegiance, becoming a citizen, becoming a productive
I think they would be very excited to get citizenship.
Okay.
I think that was a big push,
then
actually.
Shouldn't you, if that
grant citizenship to, let's say, young people who were brought here against their with no will of their own, right? They've been here their entire lives. That was the term that they used. Yeah, it was a big effort by, you know, current Secretary of State Marco Rubio at the time to try and make that happen. So yeah, I think
everybody's taken a shot at immigration in the last 75 years. Ain't nobody got it right.
No, they haven't. But I think the reasons for that, to me, are some of the problems that we have with the current stage of capitalism in this country, right? There has to be a bottom rung, it seems like. And if we have to manufacture one, they're certainly finding ways to do that.
Okay. Well, Laura.
Yeah.
What do you think about all that?
I'm going to stop talking because I'm not going to change his mind. He's not going to change my mind.
Well, I think we're just sharing perspective. I don't think we're trying to change each other's minds.
But he, like me, am a first generation American citizen. Sure. My father came over here, and it bothers me a lot. It cost my father a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of energy to become a citizen, to assimilate, to take the oath, to learn the history, to understand what America is about. That's what I meant by assimilating, to say the Pledge of Allegiance, to take an allegiance to our American flag. He came over the right way. He filed his paperwork. He came on a visa. He filed all what he was supposed to do. So all of these people, these millions of people that came over and jumped the line for those people like Jim right here, who's trying to get his citizenship, who has a very serious, his friends, we were talking the other day, have been murdered.
Right.
He has been outcast. That right there, that's what we should be prioritizing.
And so I think some common ground can be, can we get that process in set up to allow for those folks to be able to come here? I mean, the bottlenecking process of having, small handful of judges even hearing these cases, I think is intentional. It is not a priority for this federal government to try and allow for a pathway to enter this country legally. I think it creates and I say this oftentimes about local crime too, and sort of the lack of services that we get sometimes from our local agencies is that, the ones who want to, I guess, be the toughest on crime don't realize that when you try and just do the most punitive thing to somebody, you're not reforming them. You make sure that they can never get a job. You make sure they're forever labeled as a felon. When they get out, what do you expect them to do? They're not going to necessarily be on the likelihood of the track of the right track. They're more likely to go and continue to do what got them there in the first place. And I think when we create, how do they do that? They say we need to be tougher, which makes people less and less likely to get back on the right track. And then they get to sort of play this cycle over and over again. I think similarly, when we don't address immigration with, actual pathways, then we get to point the finger and say, look how wrong they did it. And around we go.
Well, if they can have an app to deport, maybe they can have an app to speed that up.
They did. But that's the same thing that I said about now citizens that to create crime, that they get into that cycle, and there needs to be a redemption process, a way that they can redeem themselves
100%.
And get back into the productive side of society. I 100% agree with that. But if we don't start taking care of our American citizens and we open the gates to all of these people,
I don't think anybody's got it right. And I think anybody that thinks they have a handle on everything that's going on with immigration is probably smoking something they shouldn't be.
Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of work to be done.
But we have to keep the dialogue open. We have to keep talking about it and figure out what exactly. But standing in the street blowing a whistle or screaming at somebody certainly isn't going to make a difference. And by the way, the people that you need to be screaming at are your legislators.
Sure.
These are people these ICE agents were hired to do a job. Screaming at them changes nothing.
Right.
Contact your legislator. That's the person that made the laws that they are enforcing.
Well, let's get away from national.
Okay.
I'm tired already.
You're right.
Man.
Listen, I can judo throw it into local every time. I mean, just to your point, I think I learned something, as a city council person who previously, worked with community organizers to engage in demonstrations specifically around, fatal shootings by local law enforcement. And then when you talk about, well, what actually works? Yeah, you got to go up top. You've got to talk to the folks that are actually pulling the strings or actually paying the money. And that's the legislature, or in our case, the local city council. When we talk about, even as, again, the city of Fayetteville and Fort Bragg are so inexorably tied, I think we all probably have some connection to military. We're all supporters of our troops, hands down. We don't want them to go to, nonsense wars. We don't want them to be put in harm's way just on a flippant response. We don't get upset with the soldier. We get upset with the guy in Washington who decided to engage in some kind of, big bravado talk that got folks sent to the wrong place and hurt. And so, why don't we apply that logic to, again, the law enforcement side? Should we be setting up our cops for failure to be going into situations where someone is a mental health crisis and they're not equipped to handle that? Or we wait and ignore those calls 10 times, 15 times over. And then on the 16th time, when now it's gotten violent, it's suddenly their fault that it didn't go perfectly when you had 20 chances to do it right before it escalated to that point.
But that deals with, taking a violent person off the street means, is the jail not overcrowded? Is the judge going to be tough?
We don't have anywhere but the jail to put these people. We need to
we have 10 beds, 15 beds for involuntary commitment.
I think at Cape Fear or elsewhere, sometimes they got to go elsewhere, But you're right. These are all issues that ultimately your your legislator or your local city council person, or your local county commissioner absolutely has a hand in saying, hey, I recognize this is an upstream issue. Right now, we've made it the fault of sort of the folks, again, on the bottom rung, whether it's, the soldiers on the national level, the local police on the local level. You're allowing this kind of tension to exist or get worse by leaving it like that, when really you were the problem all along.
Where'd you go?
Yeah, I went and unplugged myself.
I do like the idea of the having people that are trained with mental health. A company, instead of having two police officers, you can have two police officers, but one of them has to be focused on that OCS or whatever it is, so that we have somebody that's trained to handle and maybe coach or help the law enforcement. Never send an OCS person.
Let's hold that, because Mr. Benavente was very instrumental with OCS and all, but I don't want to give him too much credit right now, because I'm not really impressed now. So I did want to bring up, there was a CDB article about the county commission. They passed, or they just basically gave the okay to City of Fayetteville Police to actually enforce the homeless camping ordinance, because the county property, I guess they were camping on public library and whatever, and it was county property, so city police couldn't touch. And you could fill me in. So
I mean, sort of the ancient history around that is, y'all can remember off of Grove Street, there was a very, very large encampment right off the highway.
Absolutely.
And that's when the city of Fayetteville first experimented. It was a little bit before I got on council, with this concept of a no camping ordinance, that you cannot be on otherwise public property unless you've been given express permission. Now, even then, that property wasn't city property. It was state property, technically. And so the Department of Transportation had to give permission to the city of Fayetteville to once again
regulate it.
Exactly right. And so there was a whole process. People were put on notice. They were given an alternative to be placed into temporary housing, usually at a hotel, and to get connected with a caseworker to help them work through their situation. And we had about, I think, 60 to 70 folks that were at that encampment. And there were some folks who just took the free hotel stays and moseyed on. They didn't want to engage in any of the services. They were just sort of passing through. It was what it was. Then there were some percentage that were folks that were just kind of recently, unhoused, that they were otherwise just kind of laid a few bills. They were able to kind of use this time to get back on track. They were able to get back on track. And then we had some real success stories. I'm sure you probably recall, right in front of the library, there was a van where a young man and his mother with many puppies,
very familiar.
They're still around.
They're in
housing.
They're in housing.
I just use them as an example of folks who took advantage of that 30-day stay, took advantage of the opportunity that the caseworkers were providing them, so that they were prepared and sort of ready to take care of being in a home again, because, sort of living one lifestyle and moving into another, there's an adjustment period. There's some good practices that you've got to get back used to. And they're not the only ones, but there were a number of folks who took full advantage and got back on their feet. So, the idea, generally speaking, is a difficult one. The idea that you can't be on people's private property. I can't pitch a tent in front of Peter's house. It's going to be very easy for him to call 911 and have that handled. You can't be on public property now because of this ordinance, which the county then, to bring it back home, in basically copied and pasted ours and said the same thing for county property. So where can you exist exactly?
Well, but why did the county have to give specific permission to City of Fayetteville Police? Because still the county library is in the City of Fayetteville.
It is, but honestly, I think...
Is there some legal voodoo that they taught you that said
I think it's sometimes it's this kind of game of like, I don't have to do it, right? It's sort of
that's another, the county of the city working together so well.
And again, for them, their position is going to be competing priorities. Is that hey, we've got this 911 call and this 911 call, and you want us to add that many more 911 calls? I thought you had a sheriff's department, right? So I think what ended up happening was, I guess it was, this is a little bit of gossiping, but why not? This is talk radio. That my understanding is that there was, I guess, one of the more recent festivals that we had. There were some complaints about, folks, again, going to the festival grounds, not really to the library, but felt like their enforcement wasn't happening there. And supposedly the city was asking the county to be able to enforce.
At the end of the day, health, safety, and welfare of the people belongs to the sheriff of the county anyway. Really, City of Fayetteville shouldn't have had to pass this ordinance. It should have been a county thing.
Right. And of course, I'm sure, again, when everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. Right. So while you're right, those are the fundamental sort of requirements that they have. They would explain how they engage in that service in 10 other ways.
When City Council finally got the Day Resource Center up and going, the immediate feedback was not thank you. It was, where's the shelter? It's like, dude, we haven't had anything for the population. And furthermore, the county is supposed to be doing this anyway. So why can't we appreciate the progress a little bit? I know
what have you done for me lately?
There's always going to be work to be done.
100%.
You know what I mean?
Which is why I don't mind. And you probably, you all know this about me too. Some of my biggest critics have become some of my biggest supporters because I am okay with folks being that kind of almost unfairly critical at times. Because to me, you're what I'm hearing is not that you hate me or upset with me. It's that you care very deeply, and maybe you're just missing some information, because I've been that person where I was very passionate, very upset, very concerned about something, and then I gain some greater perspective or some understanding because someone spent that time to give that to me.
Your 72 hours.
There you go. That's another great example. And so that's why anytime I hear from folks that are hypercritical about those things, I want to have that conversation with them, because I know with just a little bit of information, it's not that they're going to see it my way. It's just that they can see how they can fit more into making this a productive conversation, or more productive effort than just saying, why did you do it? Because just like you said, at least it's progress. Now, if you're saying that you want to see more, let's talk about how we can incorporate you into making this more like what you're talking about. Because what you're talking about is probably a good thing. And there's no reason for me to take it personally and I see this a lot with county and city government. They take some of these criticisms personally, like they need to shut it down or they need to snuff it out.
Let's be honest. It's a small world we live in.
It is.
Fayetteville's the biggest little city.
Yeah, we're all neighbors here.
You know, eventually we're going to rub
100%.
elbows together.
Sure.
We're going to be in the same circles.
That's right.
And it does, but I think it's valid that it does kind of bother you like a stone in your shoe.
Maybe a little bit, but
it's like,
I want us to get over it. Like you said, we got to be the adults in the room.
I look at some people, I'm like, didn't we just talk about this?
Sure.
Why are you doing this right now on Facebook and whatever?
Right.
It's like, there was a post 48 hours ago, maybe, about somebody freezing to death in front of the sheriff's department.
I've seen that.
I'm sure you did. And because, again, we share friends. But they didn't. It was somebody that was released.
That's right.
And
it wasn't a good situation, but it wasn't that.
But it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't like the dead animal I took out of my yard 2 weeks ago because he froze to death.
Sure.
You know, but things get out of hand really quickly.
They do.
Like, you look at people that you were peers with, you're like, come on.
Yeah.
Just stop.
Yeah. I like to think that's an opportunity, nevertheless, as opposed to
if you say teachable moment, I'm turning off your microphone.
There's an even better term. You said it, not me.
So, all right, we'll move away from the homeless or the camping thing.
Yeah, well,
basically, the city thought, or the county's impression was, the county says a quicker enforcement improves public safety.
Yeah, and so again, and I guess the reason I brought up the Grove Street incident is that it is on its face not a great ordinance, in the sense that all it requires the government to do is just to shoo people away.
Right.
And that to me is not a solution. What we did the first time when we enforced the ordinance off of Grove Street, just as an example, we paired it with an actual program that got people squared away. There were some huge successes, and that to me is always the missing component. Don't just hit them with the stick. Where's the carrot, right? There's got to be that part where, because if we don't, then we're just setting ourselves up again for another potential criminal matter. Tell someone they can't be here, they feel like they have nowhere else to go, and then what do you expect them to do if they feel like their back's against the wall and they get frustrated? All of a sudden, you arrested someone who's homeless, they can't get out of jail. Are they getting any better when they come out? I mean, you know, these things are not actually resolving themselves.
I think the carrot should be you get to participate in our society. And that's part of the moral agreement we make, is that we have to take care of ourselves and the people around us.
Sure.
Except a lot of these people are dealing with mental health issues, and there's nothing there to help them with these mental health issues.
Having been around a little bit, that's what I have seen.
That's right.
Look, the mental health issues, whether it's VA, like soldiers that have returned and they're just messed up.
Sure. That's why we need asylums again.
You got regular old crazy, just people that have issues, so civilian crazy. Then you've got
is there different kinds of crazy?
Yeah. Oh yeah, believe me, I met a few last weekend.
Well,
and then
you've dated a few,
the thing is, you know, then you have the people that are content with the lifestyle,
and that's true too.
Like you mentioned, they took the hotel and they're like,
but if we were to say, out of the 100% of folks that we're talking about, very, very, generously, we say 50% of them are ready to be helped, 50% are not. Saying we took a 50% bite out of something is a massive.
I don't think that's too high of a number. No, honestly, just in my observation, to me, it's only like 10% that are actively trying to get up out of the streets again. And then the other ones,
well, there might be some that are one or two medications away from getting to be part of that 10%.
Absolutely.
You know, I think that all of these things are there's room, like you said, for progress. It might not be the home run, and we don't get the what do you call it, the grand
I don't believe
slam.
They're hopeless.
But
I definitely believe the split of what services or what we need to do for these people is very different than just giving, like the tiny home issue, which I think is the height of stupidity, because Okay, let's build some tiny homes, however, this is America. You can't make homeless Joe go live in that tiny home.
You can't.
People think, oh, we're just going to be, and they think tiny homes are also cheaper. That's the other.
That's not true.
Oh, it's a little home, so it can't be much. But
and again, the only ones
if anybody can find a way to make a home more expensive than regular, the government can.
Well, and of course, the programming, once again, are the only times that those sort of enclaves of tiny homes have ever been shown to be successful is when they had almost like a camp counselor type setup where you were expected to get up every morning, participate, work with, professionals to, again, depending on the level that you're at,
right,
whether it's to find a job, whether it's just to kind of take care of yourself, whatever it is. Unless you're also applying the programming side of it, you're not actually doing anything for anybody. But that includes also this kind of enforcement ordinance. If you're not coupling it with, and we do have at the libraries a coordinator who's, because let's be honest, during the daytime
they're in the library.
That's right. And so why are we acting like that's not the case? Can we get someone to meet them where they're at, to sit and work and talk with them? And again, those are the kinds of things that I believe are ultimately going to at least not solve it completely, take a nice big bite out of it to where we feel like we're making some progress here. And just to your point, Laura, about sort of these asylums, I did this huge deep dive on what happened to Dorothea Dix, and it's such a fascinating sort of culminated in lawsuits that against the state from the federal government that are technically, they're getting like 10-year extensions on getting it right. Like, can we get another 10 years to see what we're going to do about all the folks that we kicked out? And they've gotten like 30 years worth of extensions on what the federal government said that, hey, you guys can't, again, in this, because you said there was levels to this stuff, you can't treat everybody who is sort of having some sort of, issue with their mental health as if they are invalids. You cannot put people in rooms and just sort of give them a Rubik's Cube and just, forget about them, because there are some people.
Rubik's Cubes have sharp edges.
That's true. And so, but some folks are not far from getting right. You can't treat them all the same. And apparently that's what was happening.
Well, and a lot of this, I feel like as a majority Christian nation, or whatever you want to call it, I think there's that urge to, you see somebody wet, hungry on the side of the street, you want to help them.
That's a good thing.
We're compelled to want to be charitable.
It's a great thing.
But how are you charitable? Taking the Instagram photo of giving somebody a plate of food, or really looking at the government, to say, okay, we have to have these services. Because every homeless person is like a snowflake. They're all unique.
100,000% correct.
They don't all need the same thing.
They do not. And some of the easy stuff to do is not ultimately going to get them right. And in fact, that's the stuff that kind of exacerbates the situation sometimes, when all you are providing is sort of that very surface level assistance, and then nothing else. And like you said, giving yourself a pat on the back when you really didn't get anything. And that's why we're kind of at this point.
I've had people tell me the homeless eat well in Fayetteville.
They sure do.
They sure do.
They don't go without a meal.
No, not if they don't want to. But
they have nowhere to stay.
They don't have places to stay.
Right.
They don't
sort
have
of the deeper services.
That's you can give somebody a meal, and that makes you feel good. Like the church groups go down. And we need people to do the work, but to what end?
Sure.
We keep spinning our wheel with free meal. Mario Hardy's on right now. He's watching. He's giving me numbers of people he's helped. Like, he's giving me statistics of how many people he helped in a year, and how many people a year later of that group were still out of the street. And it's a very small percentage.
Right. But listen, what was that old tale of throwing the starfish back in the sea? You help that one, right? You're right. I mean, it might not feel like it's an impossible
One's better
task.
Than none.
You're exactly right. Anyone.
But it feels futile if you get 1 out of 100.
Sure.
But you know what? They're each individual at a time. So if you're helping one, then maybe they move on and help another one. You don't know what it's like. One person begets another person. That's what one of the people that I was helping that is now not homeless, I said, don't forget about where you came from. Come back here and show them and find somebody that you can help that's on the same path that you are. Rent them a room or whatever when you get situated and you're comfortable, because you can't forget where you came from. It's these people that move on and they never look back to where they came from.
Well, especially if you had that experience and you can kind of be somebody who speaks from a place of, having been there, that cuts a lot of, I think, where some people who haven't had that experience can't even have that conversation with some folks. So, that kind of peer support is huge.
Okay. So
that's what I would love to see with Fayetteville is to get some kind of a peer program. Okay, so here we have had these people that are home. Let's do classes. What did I do? It was so hard when I first did it.
Sure.
Maybe get a speaking engagement or something like that so that they can talk about
as
the
long as we can use
had.
an existing nonprofit and not create 10 more.
Well, the existing nonprofits, it's funny because I was talking to an old county commissioner and he was saying they show up and like, okay, we want X amount of dollars. Well, how many people have you helped? Well, we have a staff of 32 now. And, okay, well, how many people did? Well, we're working on a couple. Oh,
right.
You should have a staff of 2.
Right.
And help 32 or 1 or whatever.
With former Councilman Benavente over here, the one thing he said that in his life, that he said that I absolutely 120,000% agree with is when he talked about getting the nonprofits to play Major League Ball, cleaning up their back ends, their office procedures,
yes, 100%.
and things that are reproducible, and then they can provide the service of like these 2 things they do well.
That's exactly right. And you know this from your industry as well. You can be somebody who's passionate about food. You might not be the greatest business person. You know, you might be passionate about cooking, but do you know how to manage a team of folks and employees and hire and fire? I mean, those are all very different skills. And if
I know how to eat.
Exactly right.
I know that part.
So there's nothing wrong with having people who are very passionate about wanting to start a nonprofit or whatever it might be.
No, you want to encourage the passion, but public money equals accountability.
100%. And I think we've got a lot of big-hearted people that we just need to kind of help, refine, kind of sharpen, what they're working on, give them that experience, which includes, again, falling in line with maybe an existing or a larger one. So you start to see what it is that you are truly passionate about. Was it, the homeless aspect of it? Was it the peer support aspect of it? Was it something deeper? Maybe you want to go back to school and get a degree over it now because you've now seen sort of where your limits are. And that's not a bad thing. That just means that you have to grow, more purposefully in a particular direction. I don't know if we've been providing that kind of support up until recently. We've been sort of checking the box and saying,
I don't know why we give money and don't have an audit procedure, or
we should have one person. Here's the way that
you want to create a government job. Don't you?
No. Hold on. One person that's accountable that checks in with these nonprofits, because what I found when I followed this homeless couple around and went with them to do meetings, okay, we can help you, but we need to send you over to this nonprofit. Right. And what happens is they're getting paid by how many people they quote unquote touch.
Sure.
Nobody's helping, but they're sending them off to this person and that person and that person, and they're all getting paid for doing nothing. So if you have one person overseeing this person's account and say, okay, I'm going to follow you and we're going to find what it is, services that you need, period, then you need to talk to this and this nonprofit only.
Right.
Well, and part of John Jones with the Office of Community Safety is going to be to do that, right? Part of his job is very much to say, who's working well and advising the city, the council, the manager on where we're going to be investing, because if it's somebody who has maybe been around but not been producing, how can we do that? And he's coming from his experience with a very, very large municipal government in Chicago.
Don't say it.
Well, it's true, but what
do we have good coming out of Chicago?
Plenty. We can get specific, but what I can say, and hopefully you can agree with, is that they've got a lot going on. Their budget is next level. The nonprofits that they have are obviously much more numerous, and they've got to be vetted in a way that makes some semblance of sense. And that's something that I think we are still working on locally. And I think he at least has that.
Okay, look, I'll agree that I'm glad the director's here. Isn't he locally born and raised?
He's a Fayetteville guy, yeah.
Okay, so I'll give him that.
Yeah.
But when I hear the resume, I'm like, all right, hey, because all I know about Chicago is you vote early and you vote often. Okay, so that's
and you have a 70% chance of getting carjacked and or murdered.
Yeah, but look, I would like to speak to at a later date from OCS, because that's important.
We need to have him on.
Yeah, you guys should.
And, we'll have fun. We'll be fair. It's it'll be a good time.
No, well, we're trying to establish that office as a real major fixture here in the city of Fayetteville. So for him to come here, to get to know y'all, to be, again, for when you guys go in your travels and the work that y'all do, to say, hey, I know John, go talk to him, because you've got to have some buy-in too. Everyone's got to be bought into it.
I want to.
So what
see
is
these things be successful?
What are the measurables for the OCS that he is accountable for, though? Because I don't like this creating another government job again that does
what? Let's ask him when we bring him on.
Yeah,
let's just
I want to know what. Yeah, what are the measurables?
So the next segment we had was about Councilman McMillan and a a post he made over the weekend. So I'm going to defer that right now because I need to get a hold of him and see if he'd like just to come on and talk about it instead of us just reading a statement. I'm sure he would. So he'll be a fun guest. I know that for sure. Anyway, let's talk about the man of the hour over here, Mr. Mario Benavente running.
Well, I feel like I know you guys so well. We can talk all night if you need to.
So
we'll get to it. We'll get to the good stuff.
Running for county commissioner at large, right?
That's right.
Holy crap. You just ran a mayoral race that was citywide.
That's
now
right.
You want to run for essentially, see, people don't understand at large and district. So at large, for those watching, is everyone in the county gets to say yes or no for Mario.
Yeah.
And there's how many other people?
Technically, there's 6 folks running for 2 seats.
Right. And then, but the Republicans don't have a primary because they're putting two people on their side. So
that's right.
The 4 people on the Democratic ticket, you have 3 opponents to get down to 2.
We've got 6 of us total to get down to 2.
Oh, oh, my bad.
Yep.
Math wasn't my strong suit.
And then, like you said, 2 come March 3rd. From March the 3rd to November, it'll be 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans fighting for those 2 seats again.
Okay. All right. It's got to be a fight.
On the campaign trail and all the ways that we enjoy. I know Greg pretty well from the school board. I haven't got a chance to meet Mr. Ron Ross, I don't believe, but I know that he's been around and is doing it for the right reasons.
Well, I mean, it sounds like the Democrats having the same problem I had in my primary last year, or in 24. My God, it's been that long.
Times.
March of 24, there was 8 other Republicans running for the 2 or the 3 district 2 slots.
Yeah, but that's city. That's nonpartisan.
No. That was commission.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So when I ran commission, it was, I think there were 8 or 9 Republicans running. So we had some confusion on our side as to who, and now you Democrats are following right behind. I like it.
Yeah, well,
I like just not being the only one with the same problem.
No. I mean, I think that the local party politics stuff, it's not really, and this is me, saying this, I think for both of the local parties, they're not really exactly in control of anybody. All right. These individual candidates in some ways have a lot more power than the parties themselves. And maybe one day we'll get to the point where that's inverted, but right now,
if I had a nickel for every time somebody said, who the hell vets these people, I'd have at least $1.50 right now. Because people don't realize you're an American citizen.
Yeah, this is a wild west.
Even if you're a felony, or I'm sorry, even if you are a felon, just check the box.
Sure.
And we'll still let you on a ballot.
Technically.
I mean,
even if you strike a woman in the face.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that happened. So
well,
that's some video I will agree that I've seen and guilty as charged.
Oh my goodness.
That's just men behaving badly.
Indeed. And so, when it comes to, the many candidates, obviously you have the 2 incumbents, you've got 2 former county folks, you've got myself, and then you've got another gentleman who's interested. So, we've been running the past 5-6 months for this mayor's race. So I think, folks are, we've got sort of a little momentum going. So we're hopefully going to try and capitalize on that. Just obviously do some more work in Hope Mills, Spring Lake, Eastover.
Okay. So how many days till the primary starts? Because I know you're counting down.
Yeah. I think we're at 18 days, 18 February 12th. Yeah.
Okay.
It's coming up quick. So early voting will be from February 12th to February 28th. And then, of course, March the 3rd is the big primary day. So we'll find out, if we survive that primary, and we'll go from there.
You've done your public service. I mean, I don't want to say I was relieved for you that you were going to have a chance to maybe get back to some career stuff and recollect a little bit after that. Because you've been, look, when you're on council, you're essentially running the entire time. It's such a short term and everything. So I know you've been at that pace for so long, and just, as a friend, I'm like, take a breath.
Yeah. And that would have been nice. I think that, there was a world where, and I do believe this, that, with or without the title, there's work to be done. And sometimes without it, there's actually a little less red tape, and you can be a little bit more, as a community member speaking on some issues that you otherwise can't as an elected. But just as we were kind of doing that calculus and thinking to ourselves, like, when it comes to spotlighting certain issues that, right now, we don't feel like there's anybody on the board who would necessarily speak to them. That's where we felt like if there is a chance for us to kind of, put the bullhorn on and just be a little bit louder about some of these things that that perhaps there's a little bit more of a duty to be done in that way. And if that's, not the case, yes, there's plenty of legal work to be done in our little law office off of Person Street. The family will be happy just to have more of a full-time attorney working on those issues. But, we'll take on more cases if that's the case.
Give us your your campaigning things. Let me know 1, 2, 3 things that you're prioritizing that is the reason why you want to help and get
absolutely.
back in here. So
well, and I kind of mentioned at the top of the hour, every single morning I struggle to find parking getting to the Cumberland County Courthouse.
Okay.
While I'm there in DSS court and juvenile court, I see staff members doing their best to provide services to the community, but there are still some investments. There are still some partnerships that don't exist because we're not prioritizing those departments. And truly, that has a massive impact on public safety because the parents who are having trouble with their children, those children who have already gotten to some level of trouble that they're in criminal juvenile court, those are going to be the public safety issues that everybody in this county is going to be dealing with if we don't address them now.
Okay.
I don't see anybody on the Cumberland County Commissioners right now talking about that relationship and seeing it on a daily basis and how we can improve on county services to make sure that we're keeping this county safe. And then again, just kind of tongue-in-cheekly, we've got to get that parking lot situation fixed. There's too many folks that are trying to handle their matters, trying to pay their taxes. My goodness.
Has there been an estimate on repairing or just putting a temporary just crush and run back in this thing?
So
and going, or what?
The short answer is they're not going to do that.
Okay.
They're about to get fined for certain permits that they're no longer in play for. And so I think that's where the temporary green space concept is coming around so that they can address the environmental issues that come from when you take out, I guess, a permeating surface and turn it into, something that they were going to build onto. By turning into a green space, they're hoping to avoid some fines from the environmental department at the state. So that's why you're seeing some of that. But they have not made a decision. We need some decisions to be made on that front. I think a lot of the community is ready to see some decisions made on that front and to stop, I guess, maybe trying to be everything to everyone. Someone's going to be upset with what we end up doing, but it needs to get done.
Understanding was that they were going to try to hold out for maybe a public-private partnership to
Let's
develop.
Do it. Well, we can hold out for that, but the community starts to need some specifics. There needs to be an investment, I think, in that area because I've known for decades.
So we were trying to put $140 million right there.
It would have been a beautiful thing. I thought it was a little bit of hubris not to talk with the city about any sort of cost overruns, because if the city was going to benefit from such a huge investment, kind of like with CFRT, they approached the city and the county and said, hey, look, we've got 80 of the 120 million that we've already put in all this work. Meet us, help us get to the last 5 yards to the touchdown.
Right.
Makes all the sense in the world. I give you 10, you give me back 100, deal every day. I think that the city should have been incorporated into that conversation. I think maybe we could have helped out with some of those cost overruns.
Over 10 years, you don't think the city was engaged at all? I mean, because to me, the event center
I was there for 4 of them, and they wouldn't talk to us.
The event center being canceled, people don't realize it was really a 10-year-old at the minimum project. And we all know with government projects, the longer you let them fester, the better they get, so.
No, I don't disagree with that. And there were certainly issues. It's just if we wanted to make that investment, get all the partners involved. I'm glad to hear that they want to start talking about that, a public-private partnership. Great. I'm not sure why y'all didn't talk about that from the beginning. Get the municipality involved. But beyond that, I'm a proud alumnus of E.E. Smith High School. It's been another long promise to from the county that we're going to get a new building. And then since then, that promise has been broken over and over again. The current rumor, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you the current.
Yeah, the current rumor is that they're going to shut down Reed Ross.
Right.
They're going to put all the E.E. Smith kids into that building until they can do some patchwork on 1800 Seabrook. And unfortunately, we need more than that. And of course, I sit on the board for our Alumni Association. It's a very, very proud school with a lot of traditions, and we want to see the right kind of investment come our way, especially because our 100th year anniversary is coming up in 2027. So one of my promises that if I'm elected to that board, we will break ground on a new building by the time the 100th year anniversary comes around. And of course, we've heard a lot of the issues with the many schools that the school board is still working on.
So let me ask you.
Sure, please.
When I ran, it was they were just getting the first numbers of $805 million of capital investment we needed just to catch up.
Sure.
With the buildings. And then since then, it's been about 18 months, I guess. Is the disposition for E.E. Smith to close it? Because there were certain schools that, like you said, Reed Ross, I think they're also talking about Massey Hill.
Right. I think the most recent, and we're talking not even 2 days ago, or I guess over the weekend, so maybe it was this past Friday, that the school board staff, presented sort of what they received from these consultants and sort of their refined recommendations that did not include Massey Hill being shuttered, which I think is correct. It's the top performing school. I don't know in what world you decide that that's the one that needs to be on the chopping block.
Let's talk about that for a minute. So do you feel like the building makes the student, or do you feel like the people? See, look,
I hear you.
Massey Hill's a beautiful school.
Sure.
If I remember, It's one of the ones that might have been built around turn of the century, like 20s.
It's 100 years old.
Okay, so it was built to last,
Sure.
obviously, because some schools were trying to replace were built in the 60s and 70s,
That's
and
right.
they're garbage.
Mm-hmm.
So, but people are complaining about Massey Hill, or they're lamenting Massey Hill possibly closing. It's like, well, who created the environment for the learning there? And don't you think we can replicate that in a brand new building? Give the kids a 21st century education?
I think that's, I don't deny that. I think generally speaking, I think that's true. I think for that particular school, because it's not, or rather because it is a school of choice, that, any sort of criticisms about their enrollment, really, I mean, it's very interesting, right? This new world where we have the early college and where we have, I think on FSU's campus, I forget the international, I forget the name exactly of it. I should work on that one. But there's all
International Baccalaureate.
Exactly right. There's all these new schools that basically you graduated with an associate's degree.
Right.
It's a very different experience than traditional high school. And for better or for worse, I learned this from when I was going to my alma mater at E. Smith and asking, how's the speech and debate team? Because that's what I did so no one's surprised when I was in high school. How are they doing? Can I come around and help out with the speech and debate team? Just as an old guy who wants to give back. And they're like, well, the speech and debate team, honestly, it's been a struggle lately because all of our, and I love this phrase from the English teacher, all of our quirky kids have left to the early college and to all these other schools. And so it is a very interesting sort of change and dynamic of just how schools are operating today than they were back in our day. And so, the kinds of ways we've got to address enrollment issues is going to have to, let's focus on what that is. I think sometimes we're looking for a solution that may not actually solve the problem. So shutting down certain schools, is it actually going to fix things? Or was the issue always we were not advertising what Massey Hill is providing, and that really, if the only issue is enrollment, we can address that a different way.
Is it just and that's where also it's an elder school.
Sure.
Even though it is that old, it is more solidly built. It does require more maintenance, more capital improvement. So to me, it's just, let's recreate the environment someplace else and let's expand the early college program. But no matter what, you as commissioner, all you get to control is their budget.
That's
the
true.
School board, you get to make a wink, not like, we'd like to see this.
I think they get a little bit more than a wink. I mean, it's been kind of interesting just looking at it from the outside. Another big issue that I was always concerned by, and this is when the sheriff's department decided to leave the SRO program for most of the schools, and the city of Fayetteville stepped in as, the SRO through the police department. Right. At the same time, ARPA money was running out from that was given to the schools for them to hire school nurses and school social workers. And they were unable to have in their budget replacements for a program that was really working for some of these principals and really enjoyed having it. And my question to them was, why aren't you asking for that as well? Because just like I say in general law enforcement, I'm not trying to set up these SROs for failure. When you have an issue with certain students who the issue's at home, yes, they're acting out and now it's turning into, bullying or physical fights and stuff like that. But we're not going to wait until it gets to be a police problem for you guys to address it. You guys should be addressing these things, whether it's at home, whether it's otherwise. Why are you waiting until it gets bad? What are you going to, and I was willing to basically say as strongly as I could, we'll give you all the police in the world that you want, but at least ask the county commissioners for a budget for the school nurses and for the school social workers. And I don't want one for every kid. I want just the bare minimum ratio that the standards say. In most of our schools, that would mean just one personnel person. And they wouldn't ask. And they wouldn't ask because they did not feel like they had a receptive audience and they did not want to be set up for the no, essentially. And so another big reason I'm hoping to enter this board is so that I can let them know, signal to them very strongly that those are the kinds of things that you should be more than comfortable asking for, that those are the things that are going to make a difference when it comes to school safety, because my goodness, there are too many kids that are ending up on my court case docket from our Cumberland County schools.
Okay. So let's just revisit. So really quickly, 1, 2, 3 things you're after in this campaign.
Yeah, we want to improve county services. We're definitely talking about our DSS and our GAJ, that's Department of Social Services, Department of Juvenile Justice, Health and Human Services, right? Those are things that are, when we talked earlier about homelessness, these are all services. And I have to put this one in there too, because as a councilman, this was probably the one issue that I was not able to solve as much of a problem solver as I was animal control issues. And a lot of the neighborhoods that I used to work in District 3, our poor animal control service officers were literally half the staff that they needed to be at.
Right.
So it is as something as simple as, addressing their pay, addressing what exactly they're expected to do. There are a lot of county services that have been sort of neglected over all this time, and we're seeing sort of the poor performance from it on the other side, whether it's in the courtroom or whether it's in the neighborhood. I want to see E. Smith get a new school. I want to see, I'm trying to think of Howard Learning Academy, which is also in the Massey Hill area, the alternative middle school, get the kind of support that they need as well. Because statistically speaking, this is all coming from, as a criminal defense attorney and someone who wants to reform how we do public safety. All the statistics show that those cities that have reduced violent crime in their cities basically looked at who's committing crimes. What population is it? Now, rewind the clock. Isn't it interesting that there's this huge, huge trend where folks who were suspended, expelled from traditional school, ended up at the alternative school, not doing well there, turned 16, still in the 6th grade, they drop out.
Yeah.
And then you don't see them again until they're in their early 20s, where they're getting into more serious criminal issues. Right. So how do we address it? They did this in Harlem. They did this in Salt Lake City. They dropped their juvenile crime rate 70% over the course of 8 years by doing one thing differently. They hyper-focused on their alternative middle school. They went in, worked with the parents, helped the parents learn to be parents in some cases. But that made all the difference in the world downstream 5, 6, 7, 8 years later when it came to public safety issues. Those are the things that I'm most focused on.
So those things with the school and refocusing our energy, though, as a commissioner, you're going to make this. You can make the suggestion, but it's up to the school board to implement.
I was going to say, wouldn't that be more of a school board issue?
Well, and just like it was before, we'll tell the school board what we will not accept. Right? If you want to propose things that address those issues, you're going to get a green light from me. If you are not going to include things that are going to make this community safer, make our schools better, which in turn brings jobs to this community, because one of the biggest things that we can't get industry to show up here in Cumberland County for is because we cannot advertise attractively Cumberland County schools. You're going to get a thumbs down from me. So these are the kinds of issues that not only do I want to make sure that the school board understands, but that the community understands it's all interconnected. Whenever I could not convince a majority of my city council colleagues to get OCS passed, I turned it to the people. I had a platform. I had sort of a leg to stand on. We screened documentaries at the Cameo Art House Theater until we built up the sort of community demand for something like an Office of Community Safety, and we got it passed. So I believe as an elected official, I do have sort of the traditional means of voting and sitting on the dais and making my comments, but you do have somewhat of a bully pulpit to be able to say, hey, community, as a county commissioner, I'm telling you, this is where we're missing. And you can do that as a podcast host. You can do that as, members of our local political party. And I plan to do that whether or not I'm successful. But I think as a county commissioner, there's just a little bit more of an effort I can make to spotlight that these are truly the issues that when other cities and other counties have done it this way, they've had success. Okay. It's our turn to have that same success.
Okay. Well, if I want to learn more about your campaign or maybe throw you a couple of shekels, where can somebody go and do
MarioB.com.
Can you put that on the screen?
Yeah. In just a second. You're going to call me out?
Yeah.
You're going to make me
We're going to make Jim do it later.
No, I'll do it now. Mario. See, I almost said Mario Bay. MarioBay.com.
Yeah, okay. MarioBe.com.
It should be.
We actually had to pay just in case for Mario B without the E.com, so it redirects you just in case you spell it wrong. So either way, you spell Mario B, you should get there.
Gotcha. Yeah, sometimes you just have to do that. That's it right. Easy. So, Laura, any other parting?
I do not. As long as we know how to send him money.
Yeah. I mean, that's really the life's blood of a campaign.
That's exactly right. Because his campaign already has all the money it needs. It's just in somebody else's pocket.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I'm happy to see you running and
thank you,
continuing
Peter.
to show up.
Thank you, brother.
Look, I will say, Mario we may not be in the same political party. Mario is a fantastic organizer. He does a fantastic job getting out into the community. And while we may not see eye to eye on how to get somewhere, he always has the community's best interests at heart. So that is one big, huge thing.
I never doubt that. Sometimes I don't like the rhetoric, but hey, that's Mario Bay.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean,
I appreciate you guys.
I created a drinking game for when I watched you on City Council.
Oh, yeah?
So yeah, I mean, I was knocked out in 5 minutes, but no. Anyway, to everybody, thank you for joining us this evening, and we'll see you back on Wednesday at 2 p.m.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay?
Thank you, Laura.
Thanks, Mario.